Hey guys, it's Eric here at Farpoint Restorations and Repairs. Check it out. It's a mini bike. I'm actually going to be doing some work on this, going to fix this thing up. This, after a little bit of research, is a Monster Scooters Baja brand DB30. However, if you look closely, you might recognize it as a Coleman CT100U. And probably about another 30 brands after that. These are sold under a lot of different name brands, and although the Doodlebug is no longer made from Baja, it is made under a lot of different names. And this thing's pretty cool looking. It is a base model. This is probably one of the cheapest mini bikes you could get back then, and I'm sure in Coleman's line this is probably the cheapest one they make to this day. Now, why do I have this? This is not mine. This is something I'm going to fix up and return. And this is got some issues, so I'll go over those with you right now. It needs, when the sunlight's kind of blocking it, the carburetor is not working right. It'll run for a little bit, but oftentimes it stumbles and dies. Also, the fuel shutoff leaks, so it needs to be fixed there. That's why I've got my pair of channel locks on that. Now, it does start and it does run, but it has no power. It's a little 3.5 horsepower. I think 79 cc, might be a 99 cc, I'm not sure. The other issue is the tensioner for the chain fell off, and the customer put a lock washer on there, but now the tensioner doesn't spin, so I'll be looking at that too. It's probably just a wrong size nut or something, I don't know. But check it out, man, this thing's pretty cool. No suspension at all on these things. This was the cushion was it. That was all you got out of that. But it does have disc brakes, which is kind of cool. Cable operated disc brakes. Rear only, but that's all this thing needs. Has that little handlebar there. You could put a milk crate or something if you wanted to strap that on there. And a little room underneath it if you really wanted to get creative. You could put a light. And the seat comes up to a V-frame on the top. That platform on the bottom, I've seen some videos on the Coleman 1000, which again, this is a clone of, that talk about how you can put Predator engines or larger 5.5, 6.5 horsepower engines on there. So there's something for the brave at heart. Does have a cute little kickstand, and the foot pegs do fold in, which is nice. It looks like the original color on this one was kind of a yellow, like a bright yellow. But the tires still have decent tread on them, and they're not worn out by any means, and they hold air, so that's cool. Now there is some steering issues as well. It's kind of one of the biggest problems with it. Let's see if I can do this one-handed. Yeah. So I don't know what's going on there. Something is either not tight or a bushing has failed, something along those lines. So I have to take the fork off and figure out what's going on with that. But other than that, she's actually in really good shape. Still has the chain guard and the slip clutch. Guard is still there, so that's really cool. And a little shielding around the muffler. I will say when I did have it started that it's quite a quiet little booger. And that's cool because I don't need noise in my life. And on this side, control-wise, here, operating the rear brakes here, we have an on-off switch here, and then a twist throttle here. So not a lot to it, easy to operate. But again, you could do some add-ons. You could add a headlight here and give yourself some night riding with this thing, which would be pretty fun, I think. I always liked mini bikes, never owned one until I just came across that Thunderbird that I've been working on, the Manco Thunderbird. So I do have a lot of respect for these things. They were cool. I did get to ride one or two when I was young, but they were always somebody else's, and the rides were always too brief. So here's a beautiful example of a Baja DB30, and we're going to fix it up. So let's go ahead. I'll pull it inside, and we're going to do a fix video on this thing. Let's do it. Here it is inside the shop. There's not a ton to getting this thing apart. We're going to take off this flat blade here. We want to get that line out of there. And then we've got some springs we're going to be removing to the throttle, and then we're going to take the carburetor off. 8 millimeters, a flat blade screwdriver, and maybe a pair of needle nose pliers is what it's going to take to get this fixed up. I'll move the camera up much closer in here. You won't see me, you might see my hands, and we'll get started. All right, the first thing I'm going to do, you can see the very short hose that we have attached. And a little bit of gas to come out, but I put a piece of cardboard under this to kind of keep it from getting too ugly. It looks like somebody, there we go. somebody hooked the spring, the throttle return spring, it looks like, to the, that's very interesting. I've never seen that one before. All right, we got that out of the way, and the only other linkage, we'll take that off when we get it here, is this one here for our throttle. But first I'll take these two out of the way. And this is kind of an interesting setup, really. The air box kind of helps hold the carburetor to the engine. Now this, like I said, it ran. I should have ran it beforehand so I give you guys an idea how bad or how good it was. But we'll get this carburetor on the table and we'll go through, you know, why I decided to do what I did. And so there's our air box, and heck, for all I know, we need to clean that out. It does look really nasty in there, come to think of it. I mean, that's pretty ugly. So I'll probably clean that out, put some fresh oil in that as well. But here we are with the carburetor, and like I said, it's really held on by the air box nuts because that holds it in place. So I'm going to move that out, and when I move it out, I'm taking my cable off, or my little linkage off as well, and I'll just lay that down on the ground below this thing. But here we are, and there's not a lot to taking that off. So the next thing to do here is, it doesn't look too dirty, but I bet you the jets and everything on the inside are nasty. Plus, there's a gasket there that was leaking, and I want to stop that leak. So I'm going to disassemble this thing, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this over to the table and move the camera over there with it, and we'll go ahead and disassemble it completely and see what's going on inside. Other than that, this engine, the oil was fairly clean. The gaskets appear to have been making a good seal, so I don't see any reason to mess with those. And yeah, so there's not a lot to this. We'll get this fixed up pretty quickly, really. All right, here we are. I've got just a clean rag down here so that, well, we can keep an eye on what's going on, make sure no pieces disappear. And we'll go ahead and disassemble this. Not a whole lot to this, thankfully. Oh, yeah. Okay, so she's really dirty. There's our original O-ring. Can we save that? Yeah, okay, that's good. We'll slide this pin out here, and we'll lift up on our bowl and set that aside. And you can see what's left is, you know, the carburetor itself doesn't look all that dirty on the inside, although I'll bet you those jets are ugly. And I'm going to get a Phillips head, and we'll remove that, and then we can start cleaning. All right, we'll go ahead and take this off, see what kind of mysteries lie in here. This doesn't look all that bad, but the screen down here does, which could cause fuel starvation. So that little rubber gasket there, we'll clean that surface, and you can see I'm going to need a wire brush, and we'll clean all that out. We've got a jet here. We've got to unscrew this first, and then we can get to that jet right there, and we'll clean that out, and we'll clean all these ports. Now I'm not going to do that on film, but you're going to be spraying through there, through those two holes. You're going to unscrew this all the way and remove that jet and clean it, and you're going to remove that jet right there and clean it. Now, the reason I'm not doing that on camera is that I can't afford to have chemicals spraying up and damaging this camera lens here. It's plastic. So let me do that off camera, but we'll reassemble everything on camera, okay? All right, here we are. We got it all cleaned out, and you can see I've scrubbed that whole area down, taken out all my jets, and just cleaned it up as best as I could. Cleaned all these ports out. So we're ready to reassemble it. Here's what you're trying to clean. Little teeny holes. Little teeny holes, and a hole there. And that goes for all of them. This long piece, which I'll show you where that goes in a second, has a ton of tiny holes on the sides there. And it has a hole that goes through. Block off one of the holes, spray carburetor cleaner or brake cleaner through the center, and it'll spray out. That's going to clean that. You don't want to use a wire brush because that'll just damage things. These are really fine little holes here. So this piece right here is going in that hole. Start with that one. Now when you tighten these down, they need to be tight, but you don't want to squeeze them. You don't want to go past where they stop. So the second that tension stops, you're just gonna do that, just the very littlest bit. Now, this is our like idle set screw, so it's not gonna be perfect. It's also plastic on this, which is kind of surprising. But we're gonna go ahead and start that anyway. I had to remove that only because I couldn't get to the jet, and I had to push it back in. It was about a quarter of the way through. Something's about there. And we can adjust that on the bike. It's not going to be in the way. Okay, on the bottom here, you take a look at this. Oops. That long part goes down in there first. Once that's down in there, our smaller jet is going to go in. Same rules apply. We're going to tighten that jet down, but it's a fine machine pitch screw. I don't want to go crazy with that thing or we'll damage it. So it's tight. I'm just going to give it just the tiniest little bit to keep it in place. There's probably a torque spec for it, but I don't know what that would be. Alright, I have to reuse this gasket. Luckily it didn't break coming out. So I'll go ahead and lay that back on there. Something I do want to show you all before I put the bowl back on, and this is, unfortunate that it's this ugly looking, but it's what I've got. I don't have any way of replacing it. Alright, once it's sitting in the ledge there, that is really still ugly. Really, really ugly. So this thing must have had water sitting in it at some point for quite some time. Nothing I can do about that. I scrubbed it out with a wire brush. You can see it's clean, but that could continue to be a problem as the days and years go on. Now I'm going to put my bowl or my float back in. The needle has to be facing down. I'm just going to wiggle it until it falls into the hole, and then we'll put our pin in. Kind of wiggle that back into place if we can. There she goes. Right, and you can kind of see, hopefully on camera there, you can see that's moving freely in and out. If you ever wonder what the float does, it allows the bowl to fill up with gas, which then gets pulled up by the jet. But when it fills all the way up, the float goes all the way up and blocks off flow so that it doesn't flood out, or you'll actually have gasoline coming out, just leaking out of the carburetor. We don't want that. Okay, we're ready to put our bowl back on. I just want to make sure that my gasket, this side here, wants to pop up a little bit. Let's see it. And there we go. Once we've got that seated back in there, we'll put our bottom piece on. That's a 10 millimeter, by the way. And kind of holding it together while I tighten it up because I don't want that O-ring to get slipped out of place. Okay. There's our choke. Okay, we're ready to put this gasket back on here. This gasket controls our on-off, our flow, and I think this is where I was having some issues before. You can see they're kind of deformed a little bit there. So I hope that I can still use them. I'm going to put the good side down into the hole there. And then this part here has a little O-ring. It's kind of like a crush washer if you see that. See it? It's wavy like a crush washer would be. And that goes on like that. All right, once you got that down, you see the little piece right there. You can see the gap. That's showing whether the fuel is turned on or turned off, and then you have that crush washer or whatever you want to call it. It's like a it just kind of adds tension to hold everything down is what it's really doing. And then we're ready to put our screws back in there. I'm going to start one. I'm not going to tighten it all the way down, and then once I've got them both started, I can tighten back and forth to try to get that snug. I'm still a little bit worried about that being, leaking, but we won't know till we get it back together. I don't have any new gaskets for this, and you can buy carburetor replacements, but 99% of the time you don't need to buy a carb. These things just need to be cleaned. This thing having had so much rust in that bowl at some point in its life, it doesn't surprise me at all that it needs some work. And that's it. the on-off, our fuel. I didn't take that out or adjust it. I blew it out. It's clear, but if you want to, that's your air fuel mix right there, and that's your idle. Well, we're ready to reinstall that thing, so let's do it. Now I'm going to slide this back on. As I slide it on, oh, that's the wrong way. We slide it on. I've got to get these two lined up as well. The first one I usually do with these is the lower spring, little teeny tension spring. Matter of fact, I'm going to get a pair of pliers on that one. It's just too tight. There we go. That's kind of a bear, actually. That was being a bit of a pain. One thing I didn't show, I've already got it back together again, is I did blow that out. Actually, you kind of rinse it out. I used some carburetor cleaner, squeezed it, it's a sponge, and then just put 10W30 oil back on it. Just a real light coat, and that's pretty much the air filter for this thing, so not a lot to that. So I'll slide that back on there. And then we got our two little 8mm right here and right here. And again, I'm going to snug both of them up before I tighten either one. Okay, once they're started like so. These you want to snug down pretty good. I mean, you don't want to go crazy, but you also don't want to have any kind of air leak between those two spots. Okay, lastly, I got to hook my fuel line back up. Okay, there it is. Choke on and off. Fuel on, fuel off, and our throttle. Okay, well the carburetor seems to be done. I'm not sure what this spring, they had it hooked around that. Maybe it was just a return to make sure that the, I don't know what that would have been doing actually. Just making sure that that came back to idle maybe. I'll bet you that's what it is. Well, I can hook that back up then. Yeah. Cool. All right. Well, the next thing we got to figure out is this piece right here. And they're saying that when it was running, it seems to be rotating. Oh, it's actually unscrewing it. Okay, I see what the problem here is. I'll get the camera zoomed in. Okay, so next up on our list of repairs on this little thing is this. The bolt's loose or broken or something ain't right about it. Okay, it does spin. I think it's the fact that the nut that's on here is just too big of a washer. You see that? It's got a washer built into it. And I bet you that's hitting the side that's supposed to rotate. So let me see if I have something in the pile that's small enough to fit that. Okay, I found that was fairly simple. So it's just had the wrong size nut on it, or had a nut with a collar and it can't. So I've got one off the bench here. I'll just go ahead and install that. That's an easy fix. Yep. Okay, so now it spins freely even though the nut is tight. Cool. Well, that was easy. I was wondering if I was going to need to repack the bearing or something like that, but no, that was a simple fix. All right, we're on to our last fix, which is the steering. We have a major problem with the bushing or something in that steering column. So I'm going to back the camera out for that. I'm going to clean up some of these tools and we will start fresh with that one. All right, I've got it up on a pump jack so I can show you this before I take it apart, but here's the biggest, scariest issue of all. And I don't know if something is missing or broken. I'm not sure what's going on here. If it's the wrong size bolt maybe. Something is really wrong with this. So I'm going to take this fork off and hopefully I can figure out what went wrong there, because it's just not safe to drive that way. I don't know if there's supposed to be a bushing inside of this shaft. I'll have to try to find a manual and see what's supposed to be here. Now, I don't know the history on this bike, so for all I know, it was taken apart at some point and put together with different pieces. I just don't know. But I do know is that's not normal. That's not something we want to see. So we'll fix that up, hopefully. I don't think I have anything that long in inventory, so it may be that I have to buy a nut or a bolt. That's what it is. There is actually a bearing missing from there. A very small bearing, but a bearing. Oh boy, that's going to be a problem. Let me see what I can find. I don't know that I have anything that size or anything that I can put in there and make that work, but it seems to be completely gone. The top bearing here, I'll take the camera over and show you. There's a bearing, right? The bottom doesn't have one. Bottom is missing. There's just a hole. So it's a lot larger, and that's why it's flopping around. Let me see if there's something I can order. Well, good news and bad news. The good news is the bearings are still made. They're readily available for like $5.99 for a 5-pack, which is an odd number to put in a pack, but whatever. So I've gone ahead and ordered a set. The bad news is it won't be here for a week, so I want to ride this thing. I want to make sure that the carburetor fixed and it has some power to it, and it's fun. So I'm going to put it back together. It's a little sketchy to drive it this way, but you know, life is full of adventures. So we're going to put this back together ever so temporarily. Whew. Boy, it is cold out here this morning. All right, well, I think that's on. I don't know. One of these is on. Well, the good news here is I don't see anything leaking. I've got my fuel turned on. I've got my choke turned on. Hey, all right. We'll let it warm up for a bit. Yep, it's going to take a while to warm up. There we go. Oh yeah. Well, the little 3 horsepower engine on this is designed for a maximum rider weight of 150. As of the time of filming this, I'm sitting at about 185, so I'm a little overweight, but it does work. Once it's warmed up, it actually had a little bit of go in it, although I don't think I'd want to take any off-road trails. And of course, the steering being a little bit goofy, it's a little sketchy driving this thing, but it sure is fun. Well, in a week or two when the bearings come, I will have those installed, and this will be going back to its owner. But it sure has been an interesting little build, a little bit of fun. I hope you enjoyed it here on Farpoint Restorations and Repairs, and I hope I will get you to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And hey, maybe hit the bell icon. You'll get notifications when I do other videos like this, because I do have 3 little projects for the winter, plus the Volkswagen bus mega project. I'll see you next time, my friends. Take care.